Southeast. Northeast corner code.
Bad.
Alright guys, ignore the enemies for now and just follow Helio.
Where are you?
Guys, just follow Helio, so you're gonna ignore the enemies for this run actually.
Facing, guys, facing.
Alright, this works. Alright, this is your typical suburban setting.
So, you guys need to do more PT.
Bit of a grenade lands right here.
Alright, this is a typical suburban setting. Moving to a suburban setting is very similar, is a lot different from a city because it kind of takes into account your Rambo instincts, okay? The antithesis of what most armor players want to talk about. The thing is, when you're in a suburban setting, all this clunky tactical shit doesn't really work. It has to go out the window, and what has to come in is common sense, individual action, initiative, and your own judgments to be where to cover where your fire team is not covering, and luckily they're for you. So I'm going to take a step back, and we're going to approach the situation how it should be approached, rather than how other people will tell you it should be approached. Basically, when you look at a situation like this, the first thing you want to know is where all the cover points are. You want to know where those cover points are in relation to where your next cover point is going to be after you get up and move from that position. Because in suburban combat, the only thing we want to do is make sure that we're overwhelming the enemy, consistently shifting positions, and opening up new angles of fire for our team to use. Alright, that's the biggest objective, is to make sure that we're moving and we're constantly taking over those angles. So we're going to start off by looking at the various pieces of cover that we've got here, okay? So we'll go ahead and take a look at this corner cover right here. Ignore the windows. What I've got here is I've got a really excellent piece of cover. I can lean out next to it and I can look out. And if my fire team's moving a direction, was northeast from this position, or northwest, this would be a very good position because I can use this to hide and kind of cover my teammates. Now, since I'm doing that, what's going to happen is the guys behind me are obviously just going to be looking at that spot to the northeast to make sure nobody's coming up behind the squad. At the same time, however, they'll have to be moving up to different pieces of cover. Now, if you see the first guy, the first piece of cover that's logical is obviously this one. Okay? You can see that your teammate here, who's standing right there, is going to be able to cover my advance to this position, and I'm going to be able to cover some more of my teammates. The next logical step would be that building in front of me, right here, or this position here. I can cover a lot more space, and the guy next to me, he can even cover inside of the compound here. The next logical piece of cover, depending on the size of the element, would be to go around the building, or to actually go inside of the compound itself. Lastly, spacing. Since you see a large group of people moving to this position here, the last thing you want to identify is going to be right around the corner. Something that most people would not advocate for in a realism unit.
This is something most people would not advocate for in a realism game, but this door here opens up another avenue of approach for your squad. So if you see your entire fire team moving in that direction, and you spot this door, which just so happens to be in the same direction as your team, meets the exact same destination, looks like you can shoot through it, has pretty good avenues of fire. You can inform your fire team leader where you're going over the radio, and take a position here. Your squad were to use these principles properly, what they would end up with is overlapping fields of fire, the ability to properly cover each other in this combat environment. What we did not do in that last engagement was take advantage of the entire terrain. We did not take advantage of all possible avenues of approach, and we did not take advantage of all possible covering positions. This is how come the Russians were able to pick us off so easily. It's also how we were able to get pinned down. When you're moving, you also have to be advised, you also be aware at all times of which area of degrees on your compass you can be shot from. So go ahead and line yourselves up against this wall right now, right here to the west. Everybody hold your compasses out. If you hold your compasses out, you'll notice that an entire 180 degrees around you cannot be engaged from by enemy forces. This is a very good thing. 180 degrees, nobody can shoot. That means you only have to cover 180 degrees. If you add that's about another 90 degrees that the enemy cannot shoot you from. So you can see how concealment starts to play a bigger role in suburban combat. If you know that the enemy is directly in front of you, achieving 180 degree or greater cover will grant you a very, very high sense of security and will allow you to calculate and control the situation a lot better. The last concept that we're going to use before we put this in practice is the dead man's crest. Now, not many of you guys are probably helicopter pilots. The dead man's crest basically says you don't fly straight over a hill as a helicopter. What you want to do is you want to strafe to the left side of the hill, so that you're only controlling as much of the enemy, as much of the terrain where the enemy can be, as you can actually shoot at. So, I'm looking through this here. The enemy can only shoot me from a very, very small number of degrees. And I'm slowly controlling how much the enemy can shoot me from. As I add more, that just happens to be the place my weapon is pointing. So any place where the enemy sees me, I can happen to shoot back. Okay? It's a concept we want to use when we're peeling corners, and we're coming around corners, and we're opening up new avenues of approach. Any questions?
Negative.
Negative.
I'm going to start you guys back here. Right back here. Go ahead and stack up behind this. Right behind this doorway here. Alright team, your objective. There is an enemy blue cargo container inside of this room containing a golden latrine. Your job is to get to this blue cargo container and secure all avenues of approach while moving through this area. Evaluate the position, evaluate the terrain, find as many openings as possible to secure the greatest avenues of fire, and maintain your security. I'll be behind you to ensure that you guys aren't messing up. Just know that there's no perfect way to do this. The Battle of Fallujah took about a few battalions of Marines to get through. You guys have 4 people. You're not going to be able to cover everything, but we're going to do as best we can.
He wants to move in.
I want you guys to go ahead and move northwest, and go ahead and move now.
Okay, moving.
You.
First thing, Seth Jordan's in a covering position. Seth Jordan should not be the first person to move. Since Seth Jordan is already looking towards your objective, the people behind him should then move. Because remember, you guys are not covering any new avenues of approach.
Oh, I thought you meant breaching. Last man moving.
You guys are also stacked up on each other, moving very slowly. You want to move very rapidly for this exercise. When your teammates are behind you, trust them to cover your arcs. Trust them to do their job. And exploit the fact that they're covering something for you, and use that to your advantage to move up rapidly.
Cover what?
Window.
Moving. I got south. I got south.
The problem right now is that your fire team has achieved 2 things. You've moved a little bit too slowly. The enemy could have already been responding and could have already been pouring around this corner to attack you, and your fire team is moving far too slowly. Your fire team needs to move much quicker in order to get from one covered position to the other. There's no such thing as a good covered position. Everything becomes a target. Canada loves shooting AT-4s at buildings. The enemy loves to do the exact same thing. The only thing that you can provide security with is shooting and moving. Mostly moving. If you shoot without moving, you're going to become a target, and eventually the enemy will just pour fire on you and eventually overwhelm you. If you move without shooting, well, we all know what happens when you do that. The way to stay safe is to move and shoot at the same time. So you guys have to be covering yourselves and moving. So we're going to go ahead and lead this one. We're going to go back to the building, and I'm going to point out to you guys where we should go. With some direct examples. Alright, so I need the first man to stack up and cover this building here. Just point around the corner, make sure there's nobody there. Okay. Next thing, he is covering there. The next man, he's going to come out. He's looking this direction. He's going to start to clear out very rapidly. The third man is coming out. He sees the first man is covering him. He's going to start double timing, but he's also might notice that to the east is a blind spot. Third man, you see the east here. Nobody's covering north. People moved out generally to the west. You come around the corner, make sure there's nobody east, and continue moving on to the objective. Your buddy in the back. What's this guy? Canada? Your buddy in the back here, it looks like Seth Jordan, he's covering you. So you can go ahead and double time straight into this position, because you know there's somebody in the back protecting you. You can double time straight up to the door, use your camera, adjust your head to look inside of the door, and then take cover behind.
Now, this is the important part.
Seth Jordan.
Seth Jordan, your position position is now known as redundant. You are no longer covering the advance of any more of your teammates. This is easily the most important job, and it's going to happen to everybody. When you are no longer covering the advance of your teammate, you will then move up to a position that causes another one of your fire team members to become redundant. So, you move up in the direction that your team is advancing, and make one of their avenues of approach redundant. So, since we want to move to the northwest,